Hi, and welcome to the fourth and final module of our Vision and Outcome Management course. This time we're going to have a look at outcome delivery. So first of all, let's have a little think about how outcomes and the program life cycle are affected. So if we look in front of us, we can see the three quadrant shapes, and what those are representing is the POTI model, process, organization, tools and information. So in the start of a program, in this one, 2014, we had a POTI as is state. And at that point, we designed in 2020 what the POTI future state would be like and how things would be, what other things we needed to have in place, and very importantly, what won't be in place, which is a key element of this stuff. And then at the 2016 mark, we might have what we call an intermediate blueprint, which is on the road to the end. Where will we be in after 2 years? Because at that point, we will have delivered a range of projects. We will be at the end of what we call a tranche in program management, where you might want to stand back and decide whether you want to continue. And post 2016, new capabilities will be built. We will have started on building new projects, and some of the benefits can be achieved. So this step change. So we have the as is and the to be state, but we have the interim states. And those are the things that are driving our project delivery, or our project configuration, because we're aiming at a set of outcomes in the shorter term to get our quick wins in, remembering Kotler and his kind of need to keep up momentum and the quick win being one of his steps. All right, so that's how the blueprint and the outcomes shape into the program planning. And as you can see, you can see on the right the big red blob called benefits. If the 2014 as is state, which is basically if we've done nothing, that's how it would have continued to work. And the 2020 is the new as is state once we're there. And the difference between the old and the new as is state is going to be where the benefits are. So if you haven't got this stuff worked out, your benefits are probably going to be guesswork, which probably explains why 80 or 90% of benefits are never delivered according to research. Okay, let's have a little look at some of the delivery challenges we're going to face. But before we do that, let's just remind ourselves of the cascade that's happening. So we've got the target operating model at the top end, possibly at the portfolio level, or at the top end of a big program. We will then have a number of blueprints that each of the business areas that are being changed. They will be feeding into the business requirements that we are using to commission our projects. They will then cascade into more functional requirements, more detail about how the business requirements will be achieved, and then the technical requirements that are really being given to the delivery team saying this is what we need. So you can see how the target operating model and the blueprints and everything hold the whole functionality that we're trying to deliver together. So absolutely critical. And if without the top bits, the bottom bits can't be right. But so many times we see programs where you've got all the detail around functional and technical requirements, but nobody's really sorted out the blueprint about how does it all fit together, and they hope it'll all work in the end. And surprise, surprise, it often doesn't. So let's have a look at some of the reasons for that. So first of all, we need to think about, have we got the level of support to deal with this? This is really around the business change teams. Are they able to contribute? Have you got the support of the middle managers? Now, the middle managers are really critical in this because they can be huge obstacles to change if they don't cooperate with you. So have you got them on board, and do they understand what's in it for them? And what's in it for them may not be good, which will cause the resistance. Competition for resources. Most organizations we've worked with don't have enough of the business analysis stuff going on, and they don't have enough people who really know how the business works. And so they're like gold dust trying to get hold of them, and they don't want to be released for the program to help the program, because invariably they're delivering day to day how that organization functions. So, and you're probably not going to be the only people after them as well. Other programs and projects might need their expertise. Executive commitment. Now, one of the issues that a blueprint requires is the exec to think through what the end game is going to be. And if they may not fancy doing it, because that actually might take them into an area where they have to sort of commit to changes that are not going to be popular. and they may not be career enhancing. So it's quite often that you have an exec level disengaged from wanting to say this is how the future is going to be, or also, to be fair, most execs are very comfortable dealing with ambiguity, and what you're trying to do is get them to give some certainty, so they kind of squeal and wiggle a little bit at that. So the first place you're going to see that problem, I would guess, will be your SRO, all right, or maybe the senior business owners that might be around as well. So there's going to be a little bit of wiggling around, but the exec buying into the process, quite often buying into the process of even technical business architecture is a challenge. And it's partly why they don't exist. That's why we don't see blueprints, because that is a problem. Level of current change going on can be a big issue. Yeah, if you've got multiple programs actually targeting an organization, they can be replacing things while you're still being a capability. So when you come to go live with your capability, the as-is state has changed, and the failure to control the as-is state is a major problem for in an organization with high levels of change. And that fits in with the stability thing. You know, if the organization's shifting around, particularly when it's technology driven, there's probably lots of things going on. The as-is state moves just a little bit, and suddenly the foundation for your planning through your target operating model and blueprint, etc., is kind of knocked away. Finally, change maturities. Some organizations just don't like planning change. You know, the change is much easier to deliver when it's ad hoc and chaotic. If you want to be a really effective organization, you've got to move up those maturity levels so that you understand how the business works. But in truth, most organizations aren't. If they're doing a big transformation program, have they ever done one before? Nope. Do they ever want to go and talk to other people who've done it before? They might invest half a day or a couple of phone calls. It simply isn't enough. So change maturity is a challenge that you'll face as the program team, or if you're a business change manager. You may be an advocate, but are all the people around you on board with this approach? Let's have a quick reminder at why the blueprint or the target operating model is at the core of everything we do. So we've already looked at the interface between blueprint and vision in an entire module, so I won't repeat myself on that one. One that we haven't really talked about in this one, because it's in the benefits course, is the relationship between blueprint and benefits. Now, the as-is state is where we are now. The to-be state is where we're going to end up. And the difference between the as-is and the to-be is the source of the benefits, all right? So it may be, even if you haven't got a blueprint, that you've got a lot of detail in the benefits profiles anyway that show how this is going to happen. But if you haven't got the detail in the benefits profiles and you haven't got a blueprint, then you're heading for a spectacular failure, I would imagine. So then remembering that the blueprint drives the projects, so it provides the business requirements for the projects within the project portfolio. So everything that goes on in that portfolio, all changes, scope creep, anything like that, impact assessments come back to the blueprint. We've then got business transition. So the blueprint tells us the end state. It's telling us the performance we need to deliver to achieve the end game. And from there, we know we've got our business outcomes achieved. So the blueprint is telling us what the success criteria looks like. They're mainly in the form of management information, but describing the organizational structure, the processes, etc. And from that, we get our benefits realized. So the blueprint is at the core of everything in a program. So if you haven't got one, then you might want to go back and have a little rethink about where you're going to go from here. Just a little reminder from the previous session about this. So you remember we had the process steps around, and we talked about having a gas boiler fitted. So we've got a process. Now, this is the core of where we go in this module, because what we do is we're going to tie in to a couple of very popular processes or analytical tools, which is Lean systems and Six Sigma. But let's just remind ourselves of the process that we got. So we've got a number of steps in the process. Lean might challenge us about, do we need all those steps? And then we've got the organization behind it. Are they all working efficiently? We've then got the tools and systems. Have we got the right ones? Do we get slowed down because they're missing? And then we've got the management information that we used. So that's just a little reminder before I move on to the next ones, that we've got to remember we've got our as-is model. we now need to think about the 2B model. So that's why we've tapped into a couple of these other approaches. The lean systems approach gives us 8 areas of waste. Now, one of the areas that it looks at is the steps in the process. So you may look at and take out one of those steps. But if you look at these 8 areas of lean waste, they're actually 8 areas where you could potentially find benefits, yeah? Transportation or just moving between meetings, right? Just how do you get stuff around the organization? There's a saving there. Inventory, are you carrying too much stock? Yep. Are we waiting too long? Have we got too much overproduction? Have we got too many people waiting for calls, or have we not got enough? So we've got our customers waiting. The way we move around the buildings, yeah, or do we need to have buildings in the post-COVID world where everything was done for basically virtually and by video for a year? Yeah, are we over moving around? Do we need to travel? And when we're traveling, do we need to be more productive? Are we over processing? Are we actually building too high a quality into the system that the customers don't really mind if there's a little bit of a failure anywhere? Maybe they'll accept a few defects, but there is an argument that every defect's a failure. And if everyone has to be fixed or cost you money, then clearly you need to stop that. And then looking at our organization, are we using all the talent? So lean manufacturing or lean systems thinking, when you're looking at this is how it is now, and the as-is state, these are the places where you could find some savings, all right, and some better things and a better way. So these could be the sources of your benefits. But if nothing else, they give us a way of analysing that POTI model about how efficient are we now and some basis for how we go into it in the future. So actually in the course itself, we do a lot more about how you might be able to use this. But just for this overview video, that gives you a few ideas, I hope. And in this one, I've borrowed some ideas from Six Sigma, and this is really about managing through change. Whereas we talk about lean, it's really about designing the new state. This one's about controlling how we get there. So there's some ideas in here. So let's put it this way, if we go back to our call center with the gas plumber, yeah? So normally you'd expect to get a call answered within, I don't know, a minute, and you'd expect the plumber there within 24 hours. That's our norm that we work to, all right? Then you've got the upper and lower control limits. So if you look at that, how does that work? So maybe, yeah, the best case scenario is you get through on the phone instantly. The fault analysis guy is ready and waiting to go. He works out, yeah, your boiler's blown up and we'll have a new one. That could take us 3 weeks, but you phone the plumber and he's got a spare one in the shed and he's around there and it's fixed. And the whole thing, the best possible upper specification limit could be the whole thing's done by the end of the day, not just a response, but actually a whole fix, the best it could ever be. And maybe the worst it's ever been is because there's no boilers in the country and half the people are all sick. So you're waiting on the phone for 2 hours, you get through and they can't get anybody there for a week because all the plumbers are sick. And then when he gets there, he goes, you need a new boiler and we haven't got any. They're all on back order for 6 months. So worst case, so the best day is by the end of the day. The worst case is the end of the year, all right? So those are the upper control limits. And then you've got the more reasonable ones. In most cases, you'd have it fixed. A good performance would be 3 days. A normal performance for fixing the boiler might be 5 days. And a bad performance could be 10 to 15 days. So you've got your upper and outer control limits. Now, where they help us is when we're managing through change, we can use that data and say, well, before we started, we knew the upper and outer control limits. We knew what they were, and that's our normal performance. And in the future, it'll be a lot better than that. But as you're going through change, you'll be seeing service deviations as you're changing staff, changing the process. And you can use upper and lower control limits or specification limits today. If we start hitting consistently outside our lower control limit, we might need to trigger some contingency plans. We might need to roll back the rate of change to allow the organization to catch up. And these could be caused by lots of things. Yeah, they could be caused by people leaving. Yeah, you could be lots of resignations because they don't like it. You could be things nothing to do with your program. It could be that the economy's picked up, or it could be that the economy's not doing very well, so there's not many jobs, so they just stay. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of things, but you can use data to track why this is happening. And there's examples all the time of underperformance in an organization, and then it's on the news and all that sort of stuff coming on. Well, actually, sometimes that can be foreseen, and good program management would have preempted it, or it could be that it wasn't foreseen because people didn't really do. All they thought about was delivering projects, not delivering the performance that was needed uh, to maintain, because programs do, very few programs build something new from scratch. Yeah, very unusual for that to happen. High speed twos may be one of them, but most of them, you look at on the railway, a lot of the big upgrades have happened while they're maintaining the railway. So the same as roads, you can't shut a motorway for months. If you could, it would be easier with all the smart motorways, but they've got to keep going. And in a motorway environment, suddenly there's more accidents or something that might question whether you've got the right metrics or that the program's controlling BAU enough. So a few areas to consider when you're in the delivery stage and using the target operating model to control. So your target operating model, your blueprints will be telling you what the performance should be like and what needs to be put in place. So as you're going forward, first of all, you need configuration management. Yeah, you need to have version control, you need to have impact assessments, and if you decide that you're going to approve a change to a project's business requirements, that's going to have a knock-on effect back to the target operating model. Therefore, the target operating model needs to be updated with impact assessment on all the other projects. It's used to look at dependencies between projects. Now, you tend to hear dependency management discussed in relation to schedules, but actually, if you've got a good target operating model or blueprint, it's better to talk to them about what they're delivering. And the schedule's really only about deconflicting timescales. Fundamentally, you want to make sure they're delivering their components for the target operating model. So dependency management in this context is much more important. And we cover that in some more detail in the course. Change control. I mentioned that you've got to maintain the configuration, but when you're doing change control, when the projects start to raise change requests or the business wants new specifications added to projects, etc., change control needs to come back and say, well, what is the impact on the target operating model and blueprint? Because what seems a straightforward change to a project can create a cataclysmic change to the program if the reference point isn't back to the target operating model or blueprint. And finally, you need a design authority, somebody that looks after the target operating model and that does the impact assessment for you. That's why having blueprints with business change managers owning their own blueprints, they can actually become the design authorities for their parts of the business, which works kind of sweet. But you've got to make sure that they overlap with each other and that they kind of fit together. Okay, well, it's time for your final cup of coffee on the Vision and Outcomes course. I hope that you've really enjoyed the modules that you've done so far and they've given you some practical experience. It's now time to move into module 4 and do some more detail around the stuff that we've covered here. And there's some interesting case studies about how some super programs and some smaller programs have actually addressed this problem. And just in case you're doubting, prove that people do this work. It's absolutely critical. So I'd just like to say thank you for your attention up until now. And I hope to meet you at some stage. And if not, maybe you'll listen to a few more of my videos on other modules when you do them.